Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our February listening club. I had to do like a little bit of I forgot what the month was. I was like, did I write the wrong? I did not. I wrote the correct month. I have been on top of things, apparently. Um, Welcome to our February listening club. I'm just going to go over a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Um, this is our listening club, but we actually have uh, two other clubs, another monthly club. So we'll do the music listening club once a month. And then we also have a movie club once a month. Our movie club is AI, artificial intelligence, and we're going to be having that discussion tomorrow night. So if you'd like to discuss that with us, you can join us there. We also have a quarterly book club. We'll be discussing Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro at the end of April. So we just started that. You have a little bit of time to catch up on it so that you can join us for that talk in April. And if you're watching this live, either tonight or if you want to join us live for our movie talk, you can actually join the discussion by commenting, and we'll see those comments as they come in, and you can be a part of the discussion. And if you can't join us live, you can still comment on this, and we can still have a discussion with you that way. And if you'd like to suggest picks or find out what the next picks are going to be, you can find us on our Facebook group. And that's facebook.com/group/dragonflyarts. We don't just have these multimedia clubs. We also have a lot of other things. It's a community of artists to talk about the problems of being an artist or to share their work and ask for feedback. There's a lot of really cool things that we do there. If you're in the Los Angeles area, then we also have in-person meetups occasionally. And if you'd like to support what we do, you can support us on Patreon. For as little as $2 a month. We don't have any extra perks or anything on there. Everything that we offer is free to our members, and membership is also free. It's just the Facebook group. But if you'd like to support us and help us make all these things happen, you can join us there. And sorry, reading messages, and I can't do two things at once. But without further ado, let's talk about Aurora. All My Demons Greeting Me as a Friend. Has you guys listening to this album before?
No, not before the homework for tonight.
Yeah, not all the way through. I've heard songs from it, but not the whole thing together.
And did you like it?
I did. It's very up my alley.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. And in fact, talking to my daughter later tonight, and I'm going to ask her about this because I bet you this is something she would really be into. And I really liked that it has this ancient thing and modern thing at the same time. Like if you stripped it down to just the vocals, you could convince people this was folk music, with her inflection, her accent, and just the melodies. And then it's always got a very electronic, production values on top of that. And
Yeah.
there was a lot of cool things about it. And in fact, I went directly into producer mind and going, when I first heard this, I didn't know it was her first album. She's had 4 or 5 since then. And I went into like producer mode. Okay, if I was producing her next album, what would I be doing? So it was, I really enjoyed it.
I actually did research this time. Every single time we've had one of these clubs, it's been like 2 years that we've been doing this, and every single time I'm like, man, I should really do more research on this. And I finally decided to do that on this one. Not super in depth, but I have a little bit of information that I did on Aurora herself, as well as the release of this album. But what I wanted to start with was just the title of the album, which isn't on this picture that I brought up here. I don't know if it's on any of the pictures that I uploaded. But All My Demons Greeting Me as a Friend. And I found the quote for it, and I thought this was pretty funny. So I quite like that it is a long, awkward title. So people have to say the whole thing every time they're going to mention it. And I think that's kind of funny. But I think it's a nice thought to have your demons because we all have demons, don't we? Small and big, to greet you as a friend someday in the future. And you will come to peace with everything that's happened to you and people you know. It's a very important thing to manage to do, I think. You cannot die unhappily, but live happily after that is less depressing to say. But I just love the idea of like,
That's a quote from her?
that's a direct quote from her.
Oh, wow.
She is actually has a very dry sense of humor, and if you ever watch her interviews, she's incredibly funny.
Yeah, and I was, I didn't watch any interviews. I just listened to the album, and I just barely got into the lyrics. I wish I had spent more time with the lyrics, but there's definitely this really cool weirdness in there. Like other people I love, like Peter Gabriel, like Kate Bush, right? Like some of Kate Bush's stuff is just seriously weird. And that was the thing I wanted to, this album made me want to listen to newer albums, to see if she did like a really freaky album. Because I was thinking, it'd be a great producer for her is somebody like Brian Eno, who will bring out your inner, weirdness and stuff, and also stretch you. And the only thing, I loved it because it was when I realized it was a debut album. But the only thing I'm thinking, okay, for the next album, let's get the freak flag out there, right? And so if you think about recent albums we've done, there's varying levels of freak flag. So like ultimate freak flag flying is like the Kendrick Lamar, the Butterfly, Pimp a Butterfly, right? That's like, okay, this guy's fully connected with this freak flag. Mahler's, 90% there, but she's not quite there, which makes sense because it's her first album. She's trying to be allowed to make a second album, and that makes sense. But I would love to hear just a complete freak out album from her. Not in terms of like taking chances, doing more weird stuff, having a lot more stylistic diversity in the album.
I think she actually went a little bit more mainstream in her production.
Oh.
Which isn't, she also works with mainly Norwegian producers. But I think that the reason why she did that way is because she actually started writing this album when she was 9 years old. These are songs that she spent her life writing. Like her debut album were all the songs that she wrote until that point. And so she mentions the song Lucky that's on this album. She actually wrote the chorus for that when she was 9 and completed the song when she was 12. And I think she was 18 or 19 when this album came out. So I think that a lot of the songs on this are spanning a long, long period of time.
That's interesting.
Yeah. She was discovered after her very first song that was released was called Puppet, and it went viral after she played it in a high school show in 2012.
There you go. Wow. And this came out in 2016, 14?
This came out in 2016.
Yeah, very cool.
I need to go back and listen to more of her music. It's really just like I have a bunch of her songs bookmarked on my like, I want to perform Ariel to this playlist.
Nice.
Although
so I haven't really listened to.
That's a good thing, right?
Yeah, it's got a. I think it's interesting that I said she went more mainstream, but I really like Infections of a Different Kind and A Different Kind of Human are both pretty weird albums. I think she went weird and now she's toning it down a little bit. So I think her next two albums are actually pretty strange.
Yeah, that's cool. I'll have to check them out.
And I'll be completely honest, I haven't listened to her other albums completely through. I imagine she has like her hit singles that are pop songs. And then because even like Runaway and Running with the Wolves, which I think are the two biggest songs from this, are probably more mainstream sounding than the rest of them.
Yeah. And I'm not saying she shouldn't have pop songs. I mean, even like, Kate Bush, she would have hits, but then you go into the album, you go, oh my God. So Peter Gabriel the same way. So and so I'm not criticizing it at all. It just sounds like,
Yeah.
They're sort of playing within a defined area. They want to make sure they are given the means to do a second album, and more power to you, especially at that age. And that's another connection with Kate Bush. I think Kate Bush was discovered by David Gilmour from Pink Floyd when she was 16 or 17. Her first album came out when she was 17 or 18. She was real young.
Yeah. And she was real weird.
Really weird. But the problem with Kate, well, not the problem, but like her first album, like the singles from that album were like really big hits in England, not here, but in England. Right. So she like became massive really, really young.
Yeah, this also followed the release of a really, really popular EP, which is actually the album that was suggested on our suggestion box. And I opted for this because this is her full-length album, and the EP is like 5 of the songs.
Oh, it's 5 of these songs?
I think it's 5 of these songs.
Yeah. So it overlaps with this.
I think it definitely overlaps in at least 3 of them.
Yeah. Well, I think that was a good choice. More stuff to listen to. The
Uh,
other thing
was-
I freaked out about is I was certain she was Irish, right? And certainly the Norwegians have invaded Ireland because the Vikings came from Norway, at least partly, right? Or what is now Norway?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's hard to say, but I think, yeah.
I was absolutely stunned that she wasn't Irish. And I got to look up Norwegian folk music and compare and contrast it to Irish folk music because there's got to be some really interesting parallels.
Yeah, her vocals sound very Irish.
I know. I was just like, and then I go, and she's Norwegian. I'm like, wait. And I look, did I get the name wrong? Wait.
So
I did all caps.
Another interesting thing that's kind of a tie into this is that she actually spent her childhood in like very small and like kind of remote villages with her parents. And so she spent her childhood kind of ensconced in nature and like folk music and traditions. And that really comes out, like the nature things come out a lot in her lyrics. They all kind of feel like storybooks in a way. And they're also surprisingly dark. Like,
wow.
I feel like she might have a little bit of an obsession with death.
Just a little.
Yeah.
That is awesome. You know who else grew up in a really small town was our last music artist, Mahler. Remember I told you about that, oh my God, Murakami book. I'm always forgetting his first name. The novelist Murakami.
Yeah. Kafka on the Shores, or
yeah, that guy, but I forget his first name. Anyway, so when he was in Vienna, he was driving somewhere and then decided, oh, I can just do a minor detour and go to Mahler's home. And it was like complete like rural area. And it just it's sort of shown a light on him, like how out of place he would have felt in Vienna when he was starting his career, which is, I think, the big city he was in when he started his career as a writer. Anyway, I'm making weird analogies that may not be relevant at all, but it totally comes through the whole folk element. And yeah, that is super strong. She could easily do a folk mix of this album and it would totally make sense.
So I did love listening to this album. I really like her music, always have. But this was actually my suggestion, and it was because Under Stars is my favorite song of hers, but it's not even on here. What album is that on? It's on the Room 17 EP with a couple of the songs that ended up on this album, but not on this album for some reason.
Yeah, that's not even like a big release. At all. Like Running with the Wolves as an EP was a big release. I imagine she has a lot of songs that are just kind of here and there.
It's so good. You guys have to go listen to Under Stars. It goes really well with this album, which is why I'm so surprised that it's not on it.
Maybe she felt like she'd released it already and didn't. Oh, well, I guess she re-released it.
There were other ones on this album that were on the same EPs.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah, strange.
Yeah. Don't know. Well, sorry that your favorite song wasn't on here, but do you have a favorite song from the album?
Probably Running with the Wolves. That, or if we're going for like a more offbeat pick, Murder Song or Underwater. I really like this album.
What about you, Miguel? Did you have a song that stood out to you?
Gosh, I like when I'm so bad with song titles, and when I listen, I'm not like looking at anything, I'm just listening. So yes, I probably had some favorite songs, but I can't tell you the names.
Oh, I
So
also
bad.
really liked I Went Too Far and Conqueror. I like most of the songs on this album a lot.
Was there any songs that you didn't like?
No.
Yeah.
There are some that I liked less than the others that I've already named, but no.
Yeah, I didn't have any things where I felt like I was leaping for the fast forward button. Yeah, I liked it all. There's stuff I liked more, but yeah.
I'm glad. I also think this album's interesting because, in general, like I think I said before, she tends to try and stay in Norway. So a lot of her writing partners and producers, other than like her most recent albums, are all Norwegian producers, which probably leads more into the folk thing. But there is like a very specific sound to like Scandinavian pop that definitely comes through on this album. And a weird connection that I've always had is that Scandinavian pop does not repeat lyrics often. Like even when they do choruses, the choruses will have different words. Like they'll change them slightly every single time.
Huh.
Mm.
And I think that leads to more of a storytelling feel. Like there's a beginning, middle, and end. It's not you're revisiting the same thing. But that's like something that I've noticed for Scandinavian artists. And I wonder if it does have anything to do with like the folklore or any sort of traditional elements.
She does tour, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So she just does all of her studio work in Norway.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I think some of this album was actually recorded in London. So it's not that the recording is, I think just like even looking at the names of their producers. But yeah, in a couple of them were done in London.
Yeah. Yeah, that might have been. She signed to a major, and when that happens, they'll sometimes make you go to their studios wherever they're based. So she was signed to Decca at one point. So that might
I
have been.
wonder if it's also like somebody recorded something at a different studio and then sent it to her. Could have also been one of the possibilities.
Oh, there's that.
There's a lot of electronic elements in this, so it could have very easily been sent somewhere else.
Do you have any sense of that this particular album was heavily influenced by the aesthetic of her producer, or that it was basically like a Kate Bush thing where everything that came out was Kate's idea and she just has somebody doing engineering for her? You have any sense of that?
I get the feeling from her that she probably had a hand in most of it.
Yeah.
I know that she's a pianist and does a lot of the instruments herself, so it probably was more for the electronic parts of it and like the sound design.
Yeah, because I really like the sound design, especially the percussion. And it might have been like a Peter Gabriel thing where the vast majority is program sequence in a laptop, but she has such unique sound sources that I think she's got to be doing at least a fair amount of her own sampling, or she's taking existing samples and mucking them up. But I mean, she would have the most basic beats, but have an incredibly elegant, wonderful sound for whatever percussion voice it is. And it would just be like an amazing beat I could listen to 100 times. But if I changed the sound sources, I'd be bored to death in 10 seconds. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I really liked, and I don't think I was drawn to that just because of my drummer, just because I just thought those were the most interesting sounds, is just the things that are doing ostinatos and the bass voices and the middle voices of the percussion parts. It was really cool.
She really builds an atmosphere.
Absolutely.
I think even if you don't listen to the lyrics, the vibe of the song is very clear.
Oh my gosh, she's my daughter's age. 1996 kid. There you go.
Sorry, I'm looking at the way the personnel, which I don't know if I actually put up on here. There's Aurora. I'm like looking up how it was split up, the musicians and things like that amongst like the producers, because I think it's interesting that she is mainly a singer-songwriter. So the number of names listed under writer is suspicious to me.
Under writer?
Yeah. So like
you're talking about publishing credits.
yes. And I think they might be publishing credits more than anything else. Because there's also a huge overlap between the producers and the writers on these. So I think that's an interesting note, and I always try to look at that when I'm on things. But the main person here is Magnus Skittlestad. I don't know how to say anything, and he is actually a drummer.
There you go.
So I think that Magnus Skilstad, whose name I am probably butchering, and I want to apologize to him for that, is probably responsible for all of that drumming that you...
Yeah. But she doesn't sound like she didn't seem like the kind of person who would let something on her album that she didn't like, so she had to approve.
Probably.
And it's impossible to know unless you're there. But yeah, I mean, to know for real unless you're there, but yeah, that's pretty.
And I imagine it will be like a couple of years before we hear anything from the other people on this album. I think she's still touring with a lot of them.
Okay.
So
did either of you look up any live tracks of hers? Live recordings, excuse me?
I have seen her live recordings. She does a lot of very interesting things, and I wanted to, because for this album there are 9 music videos, and I wanted to watch the music videos because I did have the pictures up recently. But this she not only does like music, but she is also very into the imagery that she presents. So a lot of like the images that are put forward in her performances are all performances.
Okay. So she's a visual artist too.
She takes a lot of inspiration from Bjork in that regard. She also takes a lot of inspiration from like Enya.
Oh, there you go. Awesome.
So there's a lot of really cool performances that she's done, and you can find a lot of really, really cool and very niche performances. She does a lot of interesting performances in the middle of woods sometimes.
Wow. Woods sound great. Having all those trees around you when you play, it really sounds wonderful out there. It's just hard for the audience. Or can be hard for the audience, I guess.
I feel like I haven't seen her like on tour in the US a lot.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm looking up.
I'm sure it's happened.
It's just like when you hear artists, especially because we live in Los Angeles, like I always get notifications that, and I don't really remember. So,
well, I'm looking up. I just saw a wiki page on her 2019 tour, and it said she went to the United States.
Okay, great. I mean, I assume that she did. I just was curious about it because I feel like she stays close to home a lot, and she does a lot of these very personal, very small concerts.
Oh, she did Glastonbury that year.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big deal.
I love a small personal concert.
Well, Glastonbury has a lot of small venues too, though. It's not all the big, huge, massive thing, you know. What do they call that? They have a special name for that stage. You know, not the same place Oasis would play. So there's a lot of cool smaller venues on the ground.
I imagine she didn't do a smaller venue, but just because of the amount of people that I think want to see her. She's very popular.
She did Golden Gate Park in San Francisco. What's an analog to that here? It would be kind of like playing Central Park in New York, but Golden Gate Park has more venues. So that's a pretty interesting place to play. And
She doesn't have any dates listed for this year.
No, she's staying in Northern Europe.
Although
which hopefully means that she's recording new stuff.
There you go. And, I kind of have to qualify what I just said. The 2019 tour was limited to that one appearance at Golden Gate Park, which is, there's a particular festival, Hardly Strictly Bluegrass, I think is the name of it. That has people from all over the place, but started out as a bluegrass festival. It's a completely awesome festival. So I bet you she would have played someplace like that.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of venues in Golden Gate Park or festivals for that matter.
Despite what I said at the start of this talk, where I said that I think that her stuff has gotten a little bit more commercial over the years, I think that she is very keen on maintaining herself in her music and maintaining her music as herself. And I feel like she's allowing herself to explore the new avenues that she has been given almost with like her newer stuff. I will have to go through and like listen to them because a lot of her newer stuff, all I hear is like what's on the radio. And when she releases a new single, it's on pop radio. So it's kind of a great mix of, an artist who has gotten incredibly popular, but isn't losing themselves in that popularity, kind of keeping their own, holding their own.
I don't think I've heard any of her new stuff. I don't really listen to the radio, so I'll have to just go back and put it on a playlist.
Yeah.
I think she released an album last year.
Yeah, I was looking at her most recent tour in 2024, and she only toured Norway, and it was the only touring she did for the 4th and 5th studio albums, and the last two, and it was basically a promotional tour. I think it was 10 shows, so she didn't do much last year for those 2 albums.
Yeah, she doesn't have to.
There you go.
I think this might, I kind of suspected that this would be a shorter talk, but I have very little left to say on this album. I'm just happy that you guys got to listen to it and enjoy it, and that we got to listen to an artist that is currently still on the top pop charts.
Well, I wanted to ask about that because I don't really pay much attention to that. Does she get a lot of airplay in the US?
Occasionally. For this album that she released last year, none of them are really striking a chord as things that I've really heard a lot online, but like on Spotify, they're still getting like 18 million plays. But in her album before that, her 2022 album, I remember Cure for Me just being everywhere constantly all the time. So she gets airtime. It wouldn't be unusual for it. I think it's just she has more tracks in between that aren't.
Yeah.
One thing that she does a lot in her music that I noticed, because usually I have, like, especially when I was training Ariel and like picking up songs to add to my playlist of songs I want to perform to in the future. It's on like speakers. And I noticed, because I was listening to this today on earbuds, that she does a lot of the like tonal shifting from left to right.
Yeah.
I love that.
What do you mean tonal shifting? As opposed to stereo?
Like panning?
Yeah, like vocals going from left to right as opposed to stereo.
Okay.
She plays a lot with echoes in space.
Mm-hmm. It makes the music feel three-dimensional.
I'll have to listen with headphones.
That's pretty common for like folk music things because it makes it feel like it's more a cavern. It is called panning. And it's a really hard, like, it's a really, really cool thing to do, but very hard to pull off in a way that doesn't just aggressively overpower
Yeah.
you.
Well, and I was thinking about that while I was listening too, because I noticed it and I was like, oh, this is a hard, like, musical element to get right. And
Yeah,
I
it's
think
easy to mess it up badly, make people
yeah,
sick.
but
Because most
I
of the
think she
time,
uses it really well.
I think for her, like a lot of the things that she's imitating when she does things like that, I've noticed is it's very choir-esque. And I recently did see a video of her where like a men's choir just joins her while she's singing a song. And I was like, that's the exact backing that she needs, is just like a full choir. And I think doing that kind of panning does make that feel like that. It makes you feel like you are surrounded by people on all sides. And she does it kind of as a there's a word that I just forgot, but like rounds. That's the word I was thinking of.
Oh, okay, yeah. Row, row, row your boat kind of stuff.
Yeah, I almost said like row, row, row your boat, but it will be
Also known
one
as rounds.
side and then this side and then this side, and that's a lot of how she uses it, and so it almost feels like it's building on each other.
Yeah.
I really like album production that plays with space.
Mhm.
And she does that with her use of reverb and delay and that panning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It also, I don't even know how to ask this question, but it definitely sounds like somebody from a cold place. Ireland's a cold place, so it made sense. Plus, but it, you know, when you said Bjork, I'm going, oh yeah, of course. You know, Bjork's from Iceland, and then when you threw in Enya, and I went, wow, I've never heard Bjork and Enya in the same sentence, but okay. But what about it makes it seem like it's from a cold place, like a cold country? Like I guarantee you this girl did not grow up in Africa, right? Like, or South Africa, you know, sub-Saharan Africa. There's just like no way it's not that kind of music. Same thing with Latin America or Southeast Asia. But what about this makes it sound like a cold place?
It might be something in our system of just cultural. Like we understand that this goes in hand with the cultural aspects of say Ireland, like you said before, or the ties back to other Scandinavian countries.
The folkish quality of her voice, and then also like it doesn't have a lot of like I'm not abreast of my music terminology at the moment, but like you know,
like sorry, I just like you being like, I don't know the terminology. I am not abreast with it. It's very funny.
What does abreast mean? Can you define that for me? Stop using these big words, God.
But like, you know, because you have certain cultural associations with certain musical elements, like African drum beats, or you know, a South American, you know, drum beats. I don't know, like you know, there's just certain qualities that go with certain regions of the world, or that we have that association. So I don't know. It could be the lack of that kind of quality that makes it seem like it's from a cold place.
I actually had
it's interesting
thought process of, for sound acoustics, cold weather carries sound more, so you're more likely to hear something far away, and so you're more likely to have that echo.
I also was thinking something along the lines of like it almost has like a tinny quality to it.
Yeah.
Which is like, you know, when you're in an ice zone is very like kind of the sound that you think of.
You can hear the difference between water pouring that's cold and water pouring that's hot.
Serious?
Yeah. Sounds different.
Well, there you go.
The molecules are moving faster or slower depending. So
yeah. So it probably has something to do with that. I think also it's like a lot more open spaces, and I think a lot more echoey makes you think of night, which automatically kind of makes you feel like cold.
Yeah.
It is an interesting concept because I've never thought about that before, and I can't find anything in my head to say the opposite. So I have no argument here.
That's interesting. I really like that, the idea of there's a way that space manifests itself in a colder climate that's different than a warmer climate, and therefore you have this echoey kind of treatment. And I don't know what it is. And I could have been wrong, and just thinking it was from a cold place. But there's got to be something to that. Like there's that. Leonard Bernstein has those, the Omnibus TV show, which is music appreciation, and then the lectures from Harvard. I think they're called the Norton Lectures. And there was one that was all about folk musics, and everything for him was analogous to the way the cadence of the language is the cadence of the folk music. So French folk music is like in perfect cadence with French language, and you go to places in Eastern Europe, and their Eastern Europe folk music is completely in the same cadence as their language. And I wonder if you could trace that to warmer climates and colder climates.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm sure that the way that we speak and the language, the way that language influences our intonation and cadence has a great effect on the music that comes out of it.
Yeah. Does she speak Norwegian? Has she released anything other than in English?
I only know things that she's released in English. But I imagine she also has songs in Norwegian.
I will provide a Google search.
Man, what did we even do before Google? We knew nothing.
And talked with our friends in person.
What did we ever do before the internet?
Yes.
I think about that sometimes.
So AI tells me there's at least 3 songs, and they're written in Norwegian, and I can't pronounce them. But that it also says she primarily writes her songs in English.
Yeah.
Oh, looking for Aurora's more pagan Norse songs. Well, there you go. That's awesome. Now that I would really like to hear, to see if it sounds as Celtic as, because I was tricked into thinking she was Irish, right?
Mm-hmm.
When she was singing.
Yeah, it does have a very Celtic quality to it.
I would like to see if I would also get that when she's singing in Norwegian. I have just no idea how to do a Google search in the Norwegian. What is the name of their? Well, I guess they're using Arabic symbols. Anyway, I digress. But that's pretty awesome. And then she's also collaborated with a lot of people.
Yes, she has. She also doesn't just collaborate with people. A lot of the songs that she writes are like one-off hits for like ads or movie songs or other artists, but like only one off. Like I think she's done like a few very prominent ads and like written the songs for them.
Interesting. I wonder why. I mean, I wonder if that's why Under Stars isn't on any of the albums, because that song I heard it first in the credits of a video game, and it may be that's what she wrote it for.
It might also be just a publishing issue, like whoever she co-wrote it with wouldn't give permission. Like there was some falling out. But if it's a big song of hers, you would think the lawyers would figure that stuff out. Well, what about collaborators? Like I'm old, so I can think of people older that I would love to see her collaborate with. Who would you like to see her collaborate with? Not just in terms of writing a big hit song for them, but just sort of like, oh, wow, these 2 people together would be amazing.
Oh, no, I've never thought about it. And then you asked, and I've forgotten every single person I've ever heard of ever, which tends to happen when people are like, combine these 2 things. It's like when somebody asks me to say something in Russian and I suddenly realize I don't know Russian at all.
I mean, I think she would be a really cool addition to like some kind of hip hop track, but I'm not super familiar with hip hop artists.
Oh, that would be cool.
Maybe Billie Eilish. That might be a cool collab.
That would be a cool collab. It'd be an
A
interesting
lot
one.
of
They both have
overlap.
very airy tones.
Mm-hmm. But
Yeah.
very kind of like it's odd because they both have a like I kind of lump them into kind of a similar music category, but they have very different sounds.
You know, I go back to what I said that I'd like to see Brian Eno producer in terms of getting the freak flag flying higher, you know, but I mean, Brian Eno's music is not entirely dissimilar in certain ways. And he has done song-based collaborations with people. So that could be cool because they are of a mind that they wouldn't completely not get along, but they cover enough different areas that it could be really interesting, you know? Meaning that they would like write together, not just have him produce her kind of a thing.
She should collab with Yo-Yo Ma.
Ooh,
She actually just
it makes
released an
total
orchestral version of.
because he crosses over.
Let me see. Yeah, Runaway.
Hmm.
She just released an orchestral version. And I saw that when I was trying to figure out the last album she wrote. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I want to hear this.
Yeah,
Well,
interesting.
you know, so Peter Gabriel did a chamber music album that was all covers, and I could see her doing something like that. It was basically orchestral setup, but he called it chamber music for whatever reason. It wasn't an enormous orchestra, and there was like no bass guitar, there was no drum kit, there was rules. There was a piano, but no keyboards, other keyboards beyond that. And it was really, really interesting what he did with that. And whoever Peter Gabriel collaborated with, and he was collaborating with somebody who spoke the language of chamber music, she should collaborate with that person because it was really, really interesting and not in a boring way of, oh, here's an orchestral version of my biggest hit, Sledgehammer, which is basically his band with strings behind him, but like really integrating the sounds and nuances you can get from a chamber orchestra to her music, right? And he was doing covers, right? So he was doing other people's material, but it's a super interesting album. So whoever his chamber music collaborator, she should do. And I think she should also do like a traditional music album. She should collaborate with somebody from Ireland. I think if it's almost too much on the head for her to collaborate with Norwegian folk artists, but if she collaborated with an Irish folk artist or even somebody from North African cultures in terms of folk music, you know, I think that would be really interesting. Number one, she seems like she'd be interested in it, just like you would think, oh yeah, I could see Bjork, you know, collaborating with, you know, traditional musicians from Ireland or traditional musicians from Morocco. But I think that would be really interesting, and also she might really like it.
I want to see her just do something with Florence Welch.
Is that
Both are-
Florence and the Machine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have very, very different vocal qualities, and they are both powerhouse songwriters.
You know, you bring up something really interesting. That to me, from what live stuff I've seen from her, she's got a big loud ass rock band, right? Kind of like a Bruce Springsteen thing. I would like to see her with a big loud ass rock band too. One that's, you know, like Florence's band or Bruce Springsteen's band, or just something where it's just like traditional rock, guitars and drums and loud noises, and just to see how that would happen.
I think her sound would blend also well. Do you guys remember Feist?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that would be a cool mix as well.
And what's so interesting about her is that it would be cool to see an album of like light and shade, and not that I think she should go in a Led Zeppelin direction, but the Led Zeppelin albums, if you really analyze them, there would be totally acoustic folky stuff, there would be heavy metal stuff, there would be R&B funk stuff, you know, just like all over the place. And that's one thing that would be really interesting for her to put into one album. I think would be cool and fun. So a lot of these collaborations could just be the same work, and I think it could still work with somebody like her. Although I'm not sure about her voice in front of a lot of distorted guitars at way too high of a volume. But if it's handled well, like I think Florence and the Machine do, I think that could be awesome.
I think her voice is a lot more delicate, so it's an
Yeah.
interesting how you would. And I mean, she does add
Yeah,
a
as soon
lot
as I
more
said Led Zeppelin, I went,
instruments.
oh, wrong voice, but yeah.
Dream collab that is not possible, but
Dead
in my
People, let's hear it.
Aurora and Fleetwood Mac.
Well, a lot of people in Fleetwood Mac are still with us.
It's true.
Yeah, but they're not a band anymore.
Well,
No, but
they've been not a
they'll
band
still,
before.
yeah.
But they do have people who've died that are kind of important. Like Christine McVie is like, it's never going to be Fleetwood Mac, you know? But they still got that rhythm section. They still got Lindsey Buckingham. I think that would be pretty interesting. She is not.
And Stevie Nicks has made a comeback recently, so.
Yeah. And I think even though the vibe seems kind of similar to Stevie Nicks, the voices are very different. Right. And so they might work well together. Because like, if you remember, Christine and Stevie's voices were really different. They sounded amazing together, but you wouldn't mistake them for one another. I like that. Fleetwood Mac. Bring that stuff on. And that is like one of the underrated rock rhythm sections, right? And that the band is named after the rhythm sections. Fleetwood's the drummer and Mac is the bass player. But that rhythm section needs to not ever stop. They're just completely amazing. Think she could do jazz? Or would be, I mean, she's got a delicate voice that could work.
I think it may be a little too ethereal for jazz.
Yeah. Well, what about like somebody who just passed away this week, Roberta Flack, where it's like really, and I never realized that Roberta Flack never wrote her own songs. Anyway, that it's really jazzy, but it's a song, you know? Well, how about this? If we're like, I'm also struggling with jazz, but jazz instrumentation, her singing with an acoustic piano, acoustic bass, and that sort of acoustic sensibility, I think would be really cool. And there could be sort of a jazz ensemble version of that, and also a folk ensemble version of the acoustic thing that might work with her.
Yeah, totally think that she could translate really well acoustically.
Yeah. Jazz might be pushing it too far. I could totally see classical and chamber music.
Yep.
Yeah. I definitely want to see her do more orchestral stuff. I've seen her do a lot of stuff with choirs. I feel like I haven't seen a lot of strings with it. So maybe I just need to go through, which again is something that I really want to do, of going through her stuff and watching it as live performances or watching the music videos, which I'm pretty sure would be artistic events in and of themselves.
She should partner with Lindsey Sterling.
I'm not familiar with that. I think
Really?
like
she's a very popular violinist.
Yeah, like
and does a lot of dance shows while playing violin, and also hair hanging, which she trained at the Concord to do.
While she plays violin,
yeah.
What is it called?
Lindsey Sterling
from her hair.
Hang stuff from her hair?
No,
her
hang from hair hanging
from her hair.
Ouch. You know, one thing I just thought when you mentioned choirs, either of you ever saw the Bulgarian Women's Choir? You just go and it's just choir music all night, right? And really influential on Paul Simon's sort of sense of harmony. Anyway, I could see her do a tour with just choir and her, right? And when you go see the Bulgarian Women's Choir, it's kind of like the Eastern European version of that South African group that played with Paul Simon, Ladysmith Black Mambazo, where there's like rhythm and clapping and there's a groove. They're not just sitting there going all night, right? And I think that would be really interesting to send her on tour or do an album with just it's limited to a choir and what people can do with their hands in terms of percussion or, you know, slapping their chests and stuff. Anyway,
Like acapella.
that's the word. Like it's got the fancy words tonight. A cappella.
All right. I feel like we have gone slightly off topic.
No, this is about this. We're talking about collaborations for her. It's only mildly.
Yeah,
so
we'll email
Aurora-
them to her after.
Aurora, if you're watching this, here's a list of collabs we think you should do.
Fleetwood Mac.
But you know, that speaks to her music. If we need a tag to how do you say wrap this up, that there's not a lot of artists you can listen to their music and go, oh my God, chamber music, oh my God, Irish folk music, oh my God, you know, Bulgarian women's choir, all this stuff could work. And that says something about her as an artist and the music she has written and produced, right? There's a lot of people we couldn't have this conversation with, or this latter part of the conversation about. So I think that's a huge compliment to her work, and
That it is malleable.
and expansive, right? Because you can have malleable music and it can suck, but it's like malleable but also expansive, that it can be this, it can be that, it can be all kinds of stuff.
All right. We are coming up on an hour. So does anyone have any closing thoughts?
I would like to see her live with the Bulgarian Women's Choir.
Honestly, me too.
There you go.
I'd like to see her live, period.
Yeah. If you ever have the chance to see the Bulgarian Women's Choir, it's really cool. I saw them at the big cathedral in San Francisco, and it was just like, it's like the echoiest place you can imagine, but it was just awesome.
Then we should see Aurora there.
What's that?
Yeah,
So-
I think Aurora's music would translate well in an echoey environment.
The cathedral tour with her Bulgarian Women's Choir. There we go.
There
You
go.
promoters out there listening, chop, get to it.
Someone tell her.
We'll email it this
Well, that's the promoter's
entire
job,
link
right?
to her.
The promoter goes and tells her.
All right. Well, thank you guys for joining me this evening, and I hope to catch you on the next one.
Thank you for the suggestion, Becca.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Bye.
Bye.